Okay, lovely. So thank you very much for attending. Today we're going to take you through the adapting to the new business as usual. For those of you that don't know me or don't know us or aren't clients, my name is Luke. I'm the founder and CEO of Crisp Accountancy. And we're different to other accountants. We have a very clear mission, and that mission is to improve the financial education of small business owners up and down the country. And we do that through a whole host of different methods, these series of webinars being one of them. So we haven't done these for a little while now. We were doing lots of them during lockdown, helping businesses survive that period. And we now think it's a good opportunity to start these again. So we'd like to start with a thought for the day. So that is from Charles Darwin. Lots of you have heard this before. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change. And throughout this really tough period that we're not out of yet, change is the most important skill that you can have as a business. So, agenda for today, we are going to run through a few different points here, talk about some of the lessons that we've seen coming out of businesses that have been surviving lockdown, the ability to choose to change, making that decision, the fundamentals of how you go about doing that for your business, leaving no stone unturned. So we're going to look at having a deep dive into all the different areas of your business that you should be looking at and considering, pulling it together into a plan, and then talking about the next steps. Before we get stuck in, I do just want to throw in our usual disclaimer that the information in this webinar is educational, it's very general in nature, so it isn't a substitute for tailored advice. You should all, if you're not clients of ours, you should be speaking to an accountant or other professional to make sure that the advice that you get is tailored to your circumstance. And even those clients of ours that are on the webinar today, make sure you talk to us to get specific advice just for your circumstance. So first of all, we want to talk about, or put some context around what we mean by the new business as usual. So it is a term that's getting bandied around a lot. So let's look at what it actually means. So pre-COVID lockdown, we had the old business as usual. They were the ways that you used to carry out your business. For some of you, that might have been very good. For others, it might have been not so good anyway. And then obviously we had the crisis, and in the UK, we went into lockdown. Most businesses went into lockdown, and we entered this business unusual period where there was lots of uncertainty, and it was all about the continuity. So it was all about self-preservation, protecting your business, crisis management, getting access to as many government support schemes and grants as you can, and really about protecting your cash. So we've done lots of work with businesses in that period there to make sure you survive that period. Then as the restrictions have started to ease more recently, we're still in this business unusual period, but we're starting to see recovery. So we're starting to see businesses reinventing themselves, selling different products, delivering services in a different way, and also starting to think about what their business will look like going forward now. And this is a really important point to make, because the new business as usual isn't now. We still probably got anywhere between 6 and 12 months before we settle into what the new business as usual looks like. And for some of you who are back up and running, lots of businesses we talk to, particularly clients that seem to be doing even better than they were pre-COVID, it can be easy to forget and get carried away and think this is great, this is all working. And whilst that's really positive, you do need to be very wary of still being able to adapt and things still settling down. What we don't want to see is businesses that have done great things in this period here reverting back to their old ways that were less successful in another few months' time. So this kind of sets the scene nicely for where we're at in terms of an economy really in this country. Every business is at a different stage, admittedly, for different sectors, but no one has yet seen this new business as usual. So we've all seen and all have different lessons, unique lessons from lockdown. And there were four main ways that we talked about businesses surviving and thriving during lockdown and during the last sort of 6 months. And they were innovating, they were adapting, they were re-engineering their businesses, and everyone was widening your lane. So to put that into context, for example, so we've adapted as a business. We started running these webinars at the beginning of lockdown for our clients. We delivered all of our content online, all of our meetings online. Some were produced online, but not all were. We've re-engineered the way we operate to cope with fully remote working. Again, we were doing bits and pieces of that, but it still took a little bit of work to re-engineer how we do that. We've widened our lane, so that's adding new services into our sort of playbook, and that is a lot of the business advice that we've been giving out, packaged up. So we've done lots of business planning, we've done lots of business recovery planning, coaching. These are all new services that we didn't have to this extent pre-COVID that we now have and will continue to do and use with clients moving forward. So we've seen lots of different lessons that can be learned, but each of them will fall into one of these four categories. So we've had a cafe client who couldn't meet the social distancing guidelines internally because their premises just wasn't physically suited to that. So they've adapted and sold, turned their cafe into a creative cafe where they're selling arts and pottery and stuff like that, and they've done really well out of that, and that's now taken over from the food. There's also delivery. Lots of different product-based businesses that weren't previously delivering online have gone online and delivered, and that's great. We've seen service businesses who have completely changed the service that they're delivering, and that's worked really well as well. And for a lot of businesses, again, not all, but for a lot of businesses, they're actually doing better now than they were pre-lockdown. So there's lots of examples to be taken from other businesses in your industry, but also outside and different industries. And now is not the time to rest on your laurels. Now still the time to be constantly questioning how you can innovate, how you can adapt, how you can re-engineer. So as well as learning that we need to adapt, innovate, re-engineer, we've also had some other interesting lessons that we've picked up from our own business and from talking to other business owners. The first one is that when forced upon us, change can happen fast. So for those of you who've been following what we've been doing, we put a new website live during lockdown. We rebranded. We have new service plans to dealing with different types of clients and different sizes of clients, as well as the service offering we've had there. And the team have done that at the same time as supporting all of our clients and non-clients, at the same time as running other webinars, at the same time as dealing with things like furlough, which is a huge workload for us. So the point I'm making here is that when we have no other choice, we can make change happen very, very fast. And what we want to do today is try and figure out how we can take that and apply that to when the change isn't being forced upon us. So when the pressure isn't quite so great, but change is still what's required, how can we adapt and change like we have been when we've been forced to do so? And also taking lessons from how quickly we could move when we were forced to do so, making the impossible become possible. Working from home. So those businesses who are service-based like us and can work from home, I'm not one who buys into the fact that every person wants to work from home. Personally, it works well for me as an individual, but our business is far greater than just myself. We have team members that have all different kinds of situations at home as to why it may or may not be good for them to work from home. So saying that all employees want to work from home is a load of rubbish. But similarly, saying that everyone needs to go back to the office isn't the solution either. And every business is going to be different here, but really listening to your team and seeing what they want to do and what's worked well is the key here. We have kind of reopened our office. We did reopen it, had a mini COVID scare. Luckily, thankfully, everyone tested negative. We'd taken all the measures we needed to, but it was a bit of an eye-opener, and we will have the office open for those that want to come in and use it and also still work from home. So keep that in mind and talk to your team. Technology, if you're not already maximizing it, can really be your friend if you're being agile and open to it, but it can also be an enemy. If you're too slow to adapt and adopt different technologies, then you're going to really struggle. These businesses who are going to completely revert back from using Zoom and Slack and such like, and only do physical face-to-face meetings, might struggle going forward. A mixture of the two is what's needed. Something that we've been banging on for a long time to clients about having a war chest of cash. Suddenly it's not a nice to have. It's not a target to aspire to. It's an absolute must have. So if you haven't already sorted that out and really worked out what that level of war chest is that you need for your business, then that's something that you should need to do ASAP, and that needs to be your top priority. And then the other one as well, which is something again that we built a whole business around, is truly understanding your numbers. Looking at your revenue once a month or once a quarter is not enough. Similarly, relying on your accountant to manage it all for you isn't enough. It's a collaborative approach. So your accountant needs to make you aware of what numbers are important and what's changing and what they mean. And you need to really be able to understand that and work out what action needs to be taken from that. So we're seeing great take up in a lot of our coaching and training services around that, and also these webinars. So the next webinar we're going to run is specifically on getting to know your numbers, and takes you through the different financial reports and what they really mean in detail. So we know we need to change and adapt, but is that enough? Think about, as we talked about during lockdown, the results that we've seen people achieve, that we've achieved and other businesses have achieved, and think about how you can take those forward and keep producing those sorts of results. So some of those changes might have been things that you'd considered previously but never got around to, or they may have been completely new ideas that have come forward. The bottom line is that change is not easy. This whole industry is built around helping businesses to change and to adapt, but it is still essential. So what I want to share with you next are 4 different mindsets that have helped me and our business adapt to change and making it easier for us and the team to change going forward. So some of these you might be familiar with. If you've been on some of these webinars before, some of them you won't have been. So the first one is really, really key. This is my favorite one. So this is ORBED, or above the line and below the line. And essentially, when times are tough, in times of crisis like we have now, we have 2 choices about how we can respond. We can choose to act below the line, or we can choose to act above the line. Below the line is human nature, and this is where you will go naturally if you don't sort of make a conscious decision about where you are. So below the line is referred to as being in bed, and the actions that you might take if you're acting below the line, your mentality is below the line, around blame, excuses and denial. So blaming people for bringing the virus into your life, into the country, making excuses that there's nothing that we can do about it, it's out of our hands, or going to denial that it's even an issue. None of those are helpful attitudes to have, and we can instead choose to act above the line. So we can take ownership, that we can and must do something to protect ourselves and our business, recognizing that we need to be accountable to ourselves, to our team, to our clients, and taking responsibility to protect ourselves, again, our team and our clients, from these difficult times. Some of the signs that you're above the line or your team are above the line are speaking from the I, the first person, being adult-like, taking control, and having a see it, do it, own it attitude to problems. Whereas the opposite is true if you're acting below the line, and that's speaking from the you, putting blame on there, being childlike, feeling like you're out of control, or the ostrich approach, burying your head in the sand, ignoring and waiting to see. And the worst ever phrase that I hate, it's not my job. So these are big warning signs that people are falling below the line. Now, everybody will fall below the line from time to time. I am no different. Leaders are no different. It takes conscious thought and effort and having your attention drawn to this to refocus and be above the line. And particularly the harder the times are, the easier it is to fall below the line. So this is a really, really, really powerful one that you can use with your team. We use it in our team meetings regularly, and all of our team members will pull people up if they're acting below the line, including myself, because like I said, no one is perfect. So it's all about the choice and being the victor rather than justifying being the victim. The second one is the 5 A's of change. So we know we need to change, but this mindset helps us to identify the different steps we need to take to make those changes, because like I said, change is not easy, and it's okay to feel apprehensive about this. So it's not just going to happen. Having a plan about how we're going to tackle change is really key. So the first step is to be aware of what needs to change, why it needs to change, what will happen if we don't. So if I don't make these changes, businesses will be impacted, my profit will drop, etc. The next step is to accept that you must change. So it's likely that COVID has raised your awareness and your acceptance that change is necessary. Most businesses will be aware that they need to change, accepted it. So you might have accepted, so in this case, accepted for my business to grow. I've got to free up my time, got to empower my team. But it's the next step where a lot of people will fall foul of, and that is actually working out the action that you need to take the change. So being aware and accepting you need to change is great, but unless you take action and identify the action you need to take, then you're never going to make that change. So this is where having a clear plan, so a business plan or a business recovery plan with clear actions detailed about who is going to do what to make this change happen is really key. Next step, accountability. If you are a business owner without a partner, who holds you to account? Who is really there to say, you said you were going to do that, you didn't. And let's not make excuses. Why didn't you do this? What needs to happen to make sure that these actions take place? Now, as a leader, you can hold your team to account, but who holds you to account? And this is where coaches will come in. We can do coaching. Other clients have business coaches. Some people operate in mentor groups, in accountability groups. It doesn't really matter how this happens, but you need to have a level of accountability, because as business owners, it can be the hardest thing. All the motivation in the world will not get you through all the time unless you are held to account by somebody. And then the last one, which everyone ignores, myself included, is all about acknowledging. So acknowledging when changes have happened, and the positive reinforcement for making those changes. So you might be good at doing that for your staff, but doing it for yourself is particularly tough and something that a lot of people miss out on. So the third mindset is based around one of my favorite books. So for those of you that haven't read it, the Atomic Habits book by James Clear is so powerful for all aspects of life, not just business, but obviously it can be really strongly used here when we're talking about change, to talk about building habits and understanding how habits are made and reinforced and how they're broken. So what tends to happen when people set habits is that they tend to focus on outcome-based habits. So if the outcome was, I want to lose 2 stone in weight, that's fine. That's your outcome that you've decided. You then might decide what habits you need to create to do so. So it might be, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to eat no takeaways. I'm going to eat 500 calories less a day, whatever that is. And at the end of that, you might get to an identity which it might stick or it might not do, because habits are really hard to create and reinforce in that way. And the identity might be that you're a healthier person. Instead, what we want you to do is focus on identity-based habits, and that's flipping it around. And first and foremost, really focusing in on who you need to be, or your business needs to be, in order to change. So in this example, reinforcing the fact that your identity is a fit and healthy person who doesn't eat junk food, who does exercise, and focusing on that identity first. From there, you can then form the habits and say, okay, what habits does a fit and healthy person have? I am fit and healthy, therefore my habits are going to be gym, eating less, etc. And the outcomes will come naturally from that. If you reinforce those habits, the outcomes will come, and you're not trying to force them. So in terms of your business, what we need you to do is really focusing on the identity of this change, of you as a business. What do you need to look like now, or in 3 months' time, or in 6 months' time, and work your way back. Don't do it the other way around. And the fourth model that we have here that is really useful is something called the rubber band model. It comes from the Decision book, which is by, you can see down there, the two guys who wrote that. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce their name. And that is when we're making a decision between two options, imagine there's an elastic band or a rubber band around you, one that is holding you in place and one that is pulling you to a new place. Both rubber bands are equally important. One represents the consideration, careful thought processes, doing things step by step, the risk-based approach. And the other one, pulling you, represents the need for change, progression, and finding better ways of doing things. So by analysing what's holding you and what's pulling you, the result will be that you have a very carefully considered way forward. It's also really useful if there's two business owners or two leaders in the business and they might be pulling in different directions. One might have a very risk-based approach, and one might be looking more for new opportunities and innovation and adapting. And it's to say that both of these are important and both of these need to be taken into equal consideration, and a balanced approach to this is the way forward. So analysing what's holding you versus what's pulling you is a way to overcome these obstacles of getting stuck in the fear or taking huge risks above and beyond without them being considered and calculated. And at these times, businesses need to take risks. It's as simple as that. But there's ways of taking calculated risks to successfully manage that process. So we now know what adaptation is, innovation, re-engineering, reinventing yourself. And we also have the powerful mindsets that are going to help us to do that. So we have Orbed, 5 A's of change, atomic habits, and that rubber band model. Now, what are the fundamentals we need in place to adapt our business? What needs to actually happen? So the first thing is, and I know some of you on the webinar are solopreneurs, so it's just you. A team can be anything. It doesn't need to be employees that work for you. It might be a spouse, it might be you've got a business coach, it might just be a friend that you like to bounce ideas off, it might be your accountant. But discussing these and ideas with others is going to help you here. Don't feel like you need to take this all on your shoulders. A leader can lead through consensus and through ideas generated from the rest of the team. Making a plan. So having a clear plan here, like we just talked about, having laid out actions and accountability is absolutely vital. Trying to wing your way through this isn't going to help anything. Budgets. So both personal and business budgets need to be updated here at this stage. Even if you had set really good budgets 3 months ago, 6 months ago, they've completely gone out the window, let's be honest. So re-evaluating where you're at now at the moment and what needs to happen in the short term and the medium term to get you through this. A risk analysis. So in one of our last webinars, we talked about the different ways in which you can analyze the risk and what you can maybe do to mitigate that as well, and strategies to put in place to do so. Do pre-work. So what we're talking about here is if you're having a planning meeting with us, or even if you're doing it internally with your team yourself, is doing a certain amount of pre-work before you get to these planning meetings. So we're not wasting time catching up on information in the meeting that could have been done as pre-work. So a lot of the idea generation stuff can be done pre-work, and then it can be run through together as a team during the meetings that you're going to have to adapt these business plans. And having a facilitator, someone independent, to both see you through the process, but also really, really, really importantly, to hold you to account, will ensure that things get done. A risk of repeating myself, but without the accountability here, you're in danger of setting a nice plan, going off, being extremely busy in the day-to-day, coming back in 3 months' time, wondering why your business is suffering, and looking back and realizing that you didn't actually action any of the plans that you put in place. Every business owner is guilty of this from time to time, myself as well, and it's the accountability that will change that. So one of the most important aspects of planning is to understand the difference between governance and management, or working on the business and working in the business, essentially. So governance is working on the business, developing the business, improving the business, whereas the management is the day-to-day, and that's working in the business. In this example, the governance are accountable to the shareholders and the company, and the managing side of it is to the board of directors. Now, most of you won't have board of directors, but the point we're making is the managing is in the business, the governing is on top of the business and working on the business. So this is very much strategic based work, whereas this is very much action based and achieving the goals and putting into place the actions you set. And for most of you, this will be one and the same person. There'll be one person doing this both, but it's about dividing your time up between the two roles. And understanding that is key to when you're developing these plans. So your plan needs to identify the risks, the opportunities for improvements and new goals. And the way to do that is by working through each of the 10 departments in your business. And again, all different size businesses on this webinar. Lots of people are solopreneurs or just one or two businesses. So you might say to me, we don't have these departments. Well, you do. Every single business has all 10 of these departments. What it might be is that one person might be wearing many different hats. So we call this the 10 hats mindset. If it's one person, one director, and they're the only person in the business, no employees, they're wearing all 10 hats. Or it might be that you've got a couple of people and you're wearing different hats here. So what I want to do is just take you through what each of these departments are, so that you can really focus on each of these and figure out how you might be able to improve these, because this is what your recovery plan is all about. So first of all, you have the shareholders who are responsible for reaping the gains of the business, but in times of crisis, funding and financing the business. So how are you going to fund the business? The director hat is then all about the strategy that you're going to have, the direction you're setting for the business, and the goals and all the rest of it. So these two hats that you're wearing here are very much above the line strategic stuff. Below the line operationally are these different roles. Here you'll have a leader, and this leader must be one person. It must be very clear, and they are going to make these directions and goals that are set strategically happen. And you then got each of the different operational based departments of the business. So you've got the developing the service or product, improving it. You've got actually delivering the service. You've got a sales department, which is responsible for converting leads into business. Marketing department, developing leads. Finance department for obviously managing controls, keeping costs, managing reporting performance. Your admin and technology, whose main function is to improve the efficiency. And then you've got HR, managing people. So again, this might all be one person doing all of this, but when we're talking about developing a recovery plan, we want you to think of each of these wearing your different hat and how they can be improved. So each of these departments will have a function, they'll have a role, and they have a KPI or multiple KPIs to measure how well we're doing with each of these. So, for example, you might discover that your customers are slower to pay you. So the risk here is that you may not be able to pay your debts as they fall due. So your finance department's goal might be to reduce your debtor days by 10 days, and that frees up £15,000 worth of cash. The action you need to take might include a review of your terms, better reporting of your debtors, and the contracting of a credit control agency. So that's the level of detail that you should be going to about spotting an opportunity or a risk in one of these departments and the action you might take to improve that. Working through each of these one by one is how you'll make sure that nothing gets missed off this list. So unlike a business plan, what we're talking about here is a more strategic and high level is in the business plan. What we're talking about here is far more detailed action-based plan to analyze your business top to bottom and to find areas of improvement that you can work on. So while you'll be working on your business, when you're completing the plan, you need to get right down into each of the different areas of your business that we just talked about to look for opportunities for savings or for improvements. And so in other words, leaving no stone unturned. So we want to show you an example of some of the questions that come out of our recovery plan and some of the things that you should be looking at in your own business and talking you through some of these. So we got product or service development department. So here we're saying what products or services have you developed during the crisis and how the customers responded to these innovations. Are they something that's worked just because of lockdown, or are they something that you could take forward and actually customers expect now? And this is what the new business as usual might look like. If you think about pubs, for any of you that might have ventured out to pubs and restaurants, a lot of them have been forced to introduce table ordering through apps and stuff. Places like Wetherspoons and other pubs might have had these for a while, but they're far more widespread now. They're good features. People will like to have the option to have those going forward. So that might be something that stays. So what have you been doing during this crisis, and is it something you should give up, or is it something you should carry on doing? What about products or services that you haven't yet launched that you have been planning and then taking this time during this period to plan to launch new services? Have you done a break-even analysis for these? So do you know what your margins are? Do you know what you need to sell in order to break even and make a success of these? And then are there any products or services that you were selling pre-COVID that just aren't right now, that you need to discontinue? And that might be because the market's changed, or it might be just because you've really woken up to the fact that they weren't as profitable as they should have been. And in what other ways will this help you pivot the business? So adding additional service items in there, like I said, focusing on mobile delivery, that kind of thing. What about in marketing? So when you look at your marketing department, there's been very little face-to-face marketing. So what have you managed to do online? So like we said, we've been doing a lot of webinars. And is this something, again, you're going to carry on doing? How can you improve your online presence? So virtual business had some sort of online presence before, but what a lot of businesses will have been realizing is that it wasn't good enough. So really focusing on your performance of your marketing strategies from a digital point of view, revamping websites, lead generations, those kind of things. And what about the customer experience as well? How has that been virtualized? So if you've been using Zoom, how you continue to do that? I've seen home surveys for some trades be done over Zoom. So whilst you might be losing something of being there face to face, it means you can service people, or at least quote people, far quicker and in different areas of the country than you may have otherwise done, and be sure that you're going to get a job before you add in that travel time. So these are things that might well carry on being used going forward. And what about the communication and support plan to make sure these customers are staying with you? What happens if the business area you're servicing or the clients you're servicing is restricted again? What happens if there's some form of lockdown like we've been experiencing in the country in different geographical areas? How will you support them through that period, or how will you cope with that period again? Looking at your suppliers and supply chain, this has been something that businesses might not have concentrated on before, and suddenly has become very, very key. So I have developed a hobby of cycling while we were during lockdown. And if any of you are into cycling or have tried to get into cycling, you will have seen obviously a massive boom in cycling. And if you go and talk to your local bike stores and ask about buying a new bike, most of them will laugh at you. The waiting list is huge, and because the supply chain there just cannot keep up. So what happens if you're relying on a supply chain that isn't stable for your business plans? How are you going to identify and mitigate those risks? What about controlling your overheads and spending? For those of you that have teams, how are you making sure that you're not overspending and you're controlling your costs and your overheads here? And like we said, with suppliers, what alternatives are there? And we're not just talking about physical product suppliers here as well. As a service-based business, we're heavily reliant on software. What happens if one of these software suppliers struggles to deliver the service? What backup do we have for software that is a key part of our delivery plan? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. And what about your terms and conditions? So what about minimizing the risk of businesses going insolvent or failing to pay your debt? So really looking at your terms, the way you invoice, your credit checks, your credit control processes. The whole thing there needs to be really looked at very tightly, given everything that's changing now. So they're all the sorts of things that you need to be looking at and questioning in each area of your business. It's quite a task to do this. And what we want you to do is really think about how to pull this together as a plan. Don't do this as a random ad hoc exercise, bit by bit. Set aside some time and think about how you can work through methodically each area of your business and analyze, like we've just showed you some examples there, each area and how you can look for improvements. And you'll be amazed at some of the results that we've seen coming from these. So this will change for every business and business owner depending on your circumstances, but some of the areas you need to include here are your personal budget, your risk register, so what risks have you identified, how serious are they, your actual business recovery plan itself, so what you're going to do to recover here, your forecasts. For those of you who have teams, what does an updated organisation chart look like? That's a really big thing, because with furlough, redundancies, some businesses are thriving and hiring. Organisational charts are completely up in the air at the moment for businesses with teams. And taking a long, hard look at that at the moment is key. And then for some businesses, it might be about how you're going to fund this period. So lots of you have had access to grants or bounce back loans. It might be that's enough. It might be that you need to do more. So the outcomes of the plan here are that it will give you certainty and alignment about how you're going to adapt. You'll have a better idea of your cash flow and less of a strain if you can reduce your personal spending. Real clarity about what you need to be achieving in terms of numbers and sales and activities over the next few weeks, and really that peace of mind knowing of what a plan can bring to you and how you can put it all together and sharing it with your team. So what is important is that you establish what's right for you. Every business will be at different stages and have different priorities here, but some combination of what we talked about there will be needed, and there'll be certain actions and who's going to take those actions. So we've talked a lot about the mindset, about why you need to change, how you can go about changing, what it is that you need to be analysing, and now just one final mindset to share with you about how to actually get results. Because as we talked about, the awareness and acceptance of change is fairly easy to come about. Actually getting results, that's what makes a business successful. So this final one will take you through the different stages. So the first step is decisions. So you'll have literally hundreds of ideas in your head about options of what you can do with your business and how you can expand it, and different areas, and you can widen your lane, all those kind of things. But document them into a plan and making decisions on them is the first vital step. You then need to have very clear actions laid out, who's going to do what, step by step, by when, and how is that going to be actioned and changed. And then finally, multiply it by accountability. Accountability is the last piece of the puzzle that you need to really hold you to account on those actions and make sure that those three things combined start to produce results. So my aim is to help you take what you've learned today and implement some positive change in your business. Even if your business is doing well, which, like I said, lots of businesses we've seen really are doing well at the moment, there's still more you can be doing. And this isn't the new business as usual yet. Things are still going to change further, for better or for worse. So I don't want people to become complacent at this stage of the pandemic. It's vital that complacency doesn't kick in here. So doing nothing is not an option. We won't let our clients do nothing. Doing what you've always done is unlikely to get you the same results as you've had in the past. So those businesses who are just reverting to what they were doing pre-COVID, because business was good pre-COVID, they're going to really, really, really struggle here. And really remember to focus on what you can do, as opposed to worrying about what is out of your control. There's lots here that is outside your area of control. So remember that all-bed model where we're talking about staying above the line, reminding your team to stay above the line. That's absolutely vital. So lots of different ways that we can help you, whether you're clients or non-clients. So ultimately, the most important point here is that we really recommend you to complete a business recovery plan of some description. So we've been doing these with clients, been getting really great feedback with how it can not only generate new ideas, but really focus and is very action and results orientated. So if you haven't done one, you need to look at doing one now. So there's a couple of options that we can do to help you with one. We can do a full planning session with you where we'll go through it in great detail and produce a plan for you. We can even add on a finance application if you're going to need help with funding there. But this isn't all about paid methods either. We want to make sure that you have the ability to DIY this if you need be. So we do have a shortened, condensed version of this that you can do for free. If you're interested in that, all you need to do is email me and we'll share that with you. We'll send it to you, you can complete it, and then we'll have a 15-minute session for free where we run through it with you and just go over and make sure that you've thought about everything you need to think about and that you've got a clear path going forward there. So this is open to clients and non-clients. So anyone on this webinar can get access to this just by messaging me and we can go through it with you. It's really, really key to us that everyone has some sort of plan going forward. And anyone that's not a client, we do offer complimentary meetings where we can tackle problems with you in those meetings. So separately to the recovery plan. So if you're not a client, there is still an option out there for you to get support from us in general as well. So hopefully you all found that extremely useful. There was lots we covered there. A few bits of that you would have seen before, lots that was new content, but the gist of it is still the same, is that we need you guys to be making sure you have a plan going forward. If any of you have questions, feel free to put them in now. I have got one question come through already, which is, I think we might have covered this actually. So this question is, where's it gone? There you go. How can we get access to this if we are not a client? So for those of you that aren't clients, like I said, don't worry, we can still help you out. You'll be getting a follow-up email afterwards. My email is luke@accountancy.co.uk. You can just email me through and we can have a chat about that as well. We are running short on time. We wanted to keep this to 45 minutes today, and I don't think there's any other questions. If anyone has any other questions, like I said, follow up with me directly afterwards. That's no problem at all. And so a parting thought before we go is, even if you are on the right track, you will get run over if you just sit there. So make a simple plan today, commit to at least 3 actions you'll take as a result of today's webinar, write them down, give each of them an owner and a completion date. And remember, you can get our support there if you need to. So thank you all very much. I know it takes a lot of time out of your day to attend one of these webinars. We really do appreciate it. We'd love to get your feedback afterwards. We'll be sending you some follow-up emails. And anyone's interested in doing a recovery plan with us or doing your own one, just need to reply to us and we can help point you in the right direction. And also, if you found this useful, then we are booking in our series of webinars now. So the next one will be confirming the date very shortly. It will be in 3 to 4 weeks time, and that webinar will be around getting to know your numbers. So that's a really, really great webinar there. So we'll give you plenty of notice so you can get signed up for those as well. So thank you very much for listening, everyone.